Good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Chris.
Here we go with a new episode of Holy Compost.
Yeah, it's been a little while,
Yeah.
but it feels good to be back with you and to be thinking and reflecting on lots of things that are just swirling around.
Yeah.
So I think today we thought we would look at acceptance, forgiveness, and gentleness. Those three things that we can give ourselves and others. And I think what we agreed upon, at least in theory, is not easy to do, not easy to give to others those beautiful, loving ways if we do not, and I can tell you I don't, give it to ourselves. I mean, if I give it, I give it sort of conditionally,
Like, what would a condition be?
Well, let's see how you do. I mean, yeah, you might get a little of that, but I'm not giving you the full bucket full, because you don't stay on track long enough. I mean,
Now here I am thinking, oh, but staying on track is overrated too, because my little head is just going here and then there and up and down, and I'm loving it,
all right. Well, those are a lot of tracks. I mean, who says we have to have one track?
Right. There's no law that I'm aware of. So let me just feed you what my current thinking is about forgiveness.
Okay.
First of all, forgiveness made me a Christian. When I was 16 years old, I saw the movie Ben-Hur.
Yeah.
Christ is on the cross and he's forgiving his persecutors.
Yeah.
And I was so astonished by that experience, watching that happen.
What movie was that again, Chris?
Ben-Hur.
Ben-Hur, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of other stuff.
Charlton Heston.
What's that?
Charlton Heston.
Yeah. I don't know who played Jesus, but anyway. And I was so astonished by seeing that it just sold me lock, stock, and barrel. And I said, I want what he's got. And okay, so here I am, over 50 years later or something like that. And I've been I guess in love with Jesus, I guess you could say, for all those years, and thinking about forgiveness. So I decided a couple of months ago to go on Google and ask Google about forgiveness. Well, I read about 7 different definitions from Wikipedia on to whatever, and none of them resonated with me. None of them. They just left me cold and dry and questioning. And so I'm thinking, number one, forgiveness is suffering from a branding problem. Okay. I think we're not, when we say forgiveness, like when 7 people say forgiveness, we could have 7 different definitions of what they think it is. And none of those definitions left me feeling good. It all left me feeling kind of empty or bad. So I experience forgiveness as, through 3 steps forward and 2.5 steps back.
2.5.
2.5, yeah. So really what I want to do is I want to grab back the resentment. I want to pull it. Oh, don't go away from me, resentment. I want to pull it back. I want it. It's now, why is that feeding me? I have no idea. I think the idea of fairness is both a misnomer and very important to me.
Yeah, it's just occurring to me. I mean, I could, check the boxes of the things that you just said. I'm the same that way, like, not sure. I just, want to let that go completely. I have been able to do that in the past, but it's almost like you get a little, it's like, well, if there's only a couple of resentments in the stockpile, you can kind of ignore them, they're just over there. But when they start building, you're like, I can't take care of that stockpile anymore. It's way too much for me to do. It's just gonna have to grow and build the way it does, and it does, and it does, and it has for me. A matter of fact, just a quick point is that I'm gonna look at doing a fourth step starting in 2020 when I moved to Maine. And the reason why it's that specific date is because I was pulled away from the culture of AA that I was in down in Massachusetts, and it was quite a significant loss. And because of that, I hung my shingle out again. Resentments wanted, and they arrived, slow at first, and then what goes along with that, sorry for the digression here, is the personal inventory that you're supposed to keep going with, not so much. And so, it's clear to me that that's something I have to do. Maybe we'll talk about that in another session. But anyways, so we don't know, it seems to me, we're not knowing the freedom of forgiveness. It doesn't feel like I don't classify it as a freedom. I classify it as something. Geez, it's a good question. What do I don't know. Well, I guess I just say not ready for that, not ready for prime time or whatever, yeah. So the ego is saying, what's the benefit? What's the actual benefit? If you can tell me the actual benefit of forgiving, then we can look at that a little bit. We'll consider it. Thank you. So I guess we have to convince the ego that there is a benefit. And the benefit is peace.
But let's back up a little bit. What is it?
Okay, put it in the sentence again. I don't know.
Okay, so what is it? What is forgiveness? So this is something that I'm really hung up on. So one of the definitions was when you can forgive when you're forgiving when
grabbing a pen. I'll be right there.
Yeah.
Okay, back.
You're forgiving when you have more love in your heart than resentment or something like that. Now I probably got that wrong, but
no, that makes sense.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I don't know. Fortunately there's not a whole lot I need to forgive. But the couple of things that sort of stick in my craw, long ago, loaning money to a family member who didn't pay it back. And it was a lot of money, and we didn't have a lot of money at that point. And so, am I supposed to just not let that bother me? Or what is the process of forgiveness? Is it not, my impression is that it's letting, sort of dropping the resentments and but I don't think you're supposed to forget.
No, I don't think you have to forget. So if we go back to what we kind of opened with was, the idea, or I think it's a truth that we cannot give others what we don't give ourselves. So we'll put that over on the side. So, so maybe that's something we both think about. We think about, have we forgiven ourselves fully for whatever? I'm going to say without even thinking about it, the answer for me is no, I haven't. The other thing, the question you asked is, how do you get there? In the 12 steps, part of what, and I think we might have spoken on this in another session we had, is that it's like putting on a new set of glasses. You've always looked at this certain thing a certain way. And you're sort of just the observer of the resentment and why you have it, but we don't bring ourselves into it. What role do I play in this long-standing non-forgiveness or resentment, whatever? So I think we talked about it quickly, is, that there's 4 components that are always at work in a resentment, non-forgiveness, and they're selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and fear. Fear being the underpinning of the whole thing. The fear is what generates the resentment. It makes sense to me, that fear, because fear is the opposite of love, right?
So
yeah, go ahead.
Well, so what's an example of fear? The fear is at the root of it, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of general ones that everybody has on board. Fear I'm not loved, fear I'm not enough, fear I don't have control, big one. Big. I don't have control. Sure I do. Fear of yeah, control covers so much. Fear of loss. Yeah, I mean, you can go on and on. Whatever, if you may be able to call up in your mind right now things that you're fearful about, and if they're active and they're still you believe are. If I believe that I'm not good enough or I'm not loved, I'm gonna make that happen.
So you're gonna create a situation that proves it.
That's why unaddressed fear, is it's our undoing.
It's our undoing. Very well put. Very well put. So for me, the idea of fairness is a huge stumbling block. How many situations can we think of that are fair?
Let's see. None. Okay, well, we have to go a little further, Chris. We have to ask, what do we mean by fair?
Yeah. So a fair to me is when both parties are come out of a situation in an equal sort of way.
Okay. How often does that happen, Chris?
But I was just thinking about, well, not often. I was just thinking about how my husband and I have this trash system in our kitchen, where we have, regular trash, and then we have compost, and then we have citrus, which is not supposed to be in the compost. Okay. And so we have all kinds of, and then we have a liquid compost, which is just, liquid. And my husband is not as on board with all this system as I am. I'm very obsessive with it because I love compost. So I was just thinking the other day, very minor thing. He threw something in the wrong barrel. And I think it was because he was just short on time and wasn't as devoted to the process as I am.
Sure.
So I started to resent him for that.
Well, yeah. What were you thinking? If you don't mind sharing.
Well, he
No. What were you thinking?
What was I thinking?
about that situation? What were you telling yourself?
I was telling myself that he gets annoyed with me for here it's a he again, right? Not me.
See how we are?
Yeah, so well, I'm just telling you what happened.
Actually, you already said it, because you said early in the beginning of this, that he's just not as obsessed with it.
Yeah, he's not as devoted as I
He's not
am. And
devoted.
Sometimes
He
I
should
can.
be. Dang it, he should be, Chris.
Yeah, but
Hey,
sometimes I'm just not as I'm not as like flexible as I might be if I was living with other people, and I get a little bit obsessive.
quick question. Are you ever a little bit envious of his laid backness? Come on. Once in a while.
Yeah, but there's a lot of type A in him too. So
Okay. All right.
and in
I
fact,
can see I'm not going to win this one.
and in fact, we are really excellent compliments for each other.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, and
Yep.
it's a lovely thing. So, so I said to myself, I'm either gonna have to tolerate this compost thing, or talk to him about it, and I'm not going to talk to him about it because it's so frivolous and minor and kind of ridiculous to do so. I don't want that to become a
decided not to.
source of tension.
Right. Sure. Okay. That
Okay.
seems to make sense.
But I'm at the same time, I'm thinking, this is important to me and he should realize that.
Right. Of course.
This is all while I'm cooking lunch, It's...
Okay. So when we were speaking of forgiveness.
Yeah. So I decided, and bottom line, I decided that I'd rather have a happy husband than have my compost organized.
Oh boy, that's wow. This is a spiritual gift. I'd rather have a nice relationship and be at ease than having to get that compost straight.
Yeah, and I ask myself that question once or twice every day, probably. About this or that, when you live with
once or twice. Wow, you are advanced.
Well, I should keep track of it, because I grossly underestimate the time that I spend obsessing over things that are useless.
And that's another thing we should cover: obsessiveness. Because I think that's a biggie in this culture, in our culture. Obsessed with one thing or another.
Why? Tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, I think that comes out of this external, external situation where we live in a very externalized culture, and it's easy to get obsessed about things. I mean, because there's so many things. My God, I mean, why can't we just still be in a cave with a I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't want to have an animal skin on, so we'd have to have invented the loom and all that by then. But in any case, I mean, do you think the cave? Well, I don't know. Maybe have cave Neanderthals obsessed too. I mean,
I think so.
Yeah, I when I say it, I think so. The question is, how do we? Because that obsessive stuff, I've got it on board big time. Eats a lot of my energy up and my ability to do more positive things, because usually if I'm obsessing, it's not about the world is beautiful, although that's true. It's more like, I can't believe she doesn't have her dog on a leash. Oh my God. So
back to forgiveness.
Thank you.
No, the detours are always fabulous. So some people think forgiveness is just, I guess, converting resentment to acceptance or something like that.
Forgiveness, yeah.
I don't really relate to that very much. I kind of have to forget about. It's easier for me to forget, to kind of here's the resentment, and to sort of remove it from my consciousness, which sometimes I can do, sometimes I can't. But when it's so let's say there's an issue that's very, very old, like this one I mentioned before about
Then
the lung.
that falls under resentment category, because anything that stays
Aha.
is anger being refelt.
Anger being.
Yeah.
So
Or
I just don't think it's realistic to have something that's potentially a source of anger to disappear. I think it goes into a different file cabinet.
I think that it gets alchemized. And I think that alchemically, I can't say that word. What is it?
Alchemy.
Alchemy. Thank you. Thank you. I think the alchemy is provided by the one, by the divine. My experience in doing that work that I spoke about briefly before, the resentment turnarounds, was in the process of doing those things. I mean, it felt sort of by rote, like, okay, that's that, and you'd be writing it. And then when you put the pen down, you'd get a different picture began to form about the situation. It
Yeah, see,
and it
this is
wasn't
critical, I think. Keep going.
yeah. And I recall vividly, I was doing some resentments. You can do turnarounds on resentments against yourself, and I had a number of resentments, angers about things that I had done and so forth. And anyway, so I do the thing. I do the turnarounds, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I see myself differently. Like it was just this shift. Instead of holding myself over the fire, I began to have compassion for myself. It was such a strange phenomenon. I was like, oh my God, you just were trying. You were trying. You were doing what you knew best. You did the best. I couldn't get there. And I don't know that we can ever get totally there for others unless we have that. Now, that said, it's a slippery slope. I can build up more things that I can hold myself overly accountable for and not have compassion for myself and go on that whole journey of blame, shame, etc.
How does that feed you?
Well, it doesn't feed me at all. It starves me to death, as a matter of fact. But it's very hardwired. So if I'm not paying attention and I don't have a daily practice of some kind which is step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we're wrong, promptly admit it. And that might be promptly admitting to myself, wrong move, not good. Let's see what's going on here. What is it that you need and you're not getting, and you're trying to get it in a way that isn't healthy. So it's this awareness that with practice, it becomes more easily available. I mean, but if because I know, man, I can tell you, came to Maine in 2020, it's 2023, and I know that I could build a fairly substantial list of resentments because I didn't stay with what I needed to stay with, which is awareness and calling on God. Once I get in a lot of pain, though, it seems like it's pretty easy to call on God. So if that's any compensation.
Well, I think I think the Lord gets a lot of attention when we're at our wits' end, or not our wits' end, but our
wits end's okay.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. Trying to live by your wits.
Right. And when I fall on my knees and surrender, I mean, it's all about surrender for me.
Absolutely.
Surrendering in the really small things that happen every day, surrendering in the enormous things that happen 5 times in a lifetime or whatever.
Yes.
Surrender in the tedious self-talk that happens with me constantly throughout the day, every day, all the time. Um, somebody said 70,000 thoughts a day go through our head.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, for me, maybe 1% of those thoughts are ones that I want to think about.
Mm, yeah.
1% maybe.
At point 100%.
That's probably more accurate. And fortunately, I have developed and worked on, self-talk language, maybe, for lack of a better word,
Yep.
that I can slip into really quickly when I realize that I'm on the road to nowhere.
That's great. That's
When I'm
great.
thinking about, I should clean the house more often. I should call people more often. I really need to take care of that garden. Um, I really would like to watch that movie. This needs to be done. That needs to be done. I didn't do it well. The whole predictable litany of what I tell myself every day.
Yeah.
Um,
I didn't hear anything in there about you.
well, I didn't include that because I think I know what you mean by that, but I didn't include that because the healing moments where I realize that I'm on the road to nowhere and need to get back to God are the they're the jewels of my day. Um when I stop and I say, show me the way. When I stop and I say, is this really what I want for myself? No, it's not. Let's get on a different route.
Yeah.
Let's think about the beauty I see outside. Let's think about the gratitude I feel. Let's think about um let's pray for the suffering. Let's because I don't know, I was going to get off on that, praying for the suffering, but maybe we'll leave that to a different Holy Compost. But
Yeah. What I was going to ask though, how that sounds wonderful. I want to do those same things, and on occasion, if I wind myself into a total knot, I can start thinking about what do I really want here. But it takes me a long time to recognize that I'm in a fix in my head, in my ego. My fear-based ego is right out in front. It sounds to me like you've been able to form a practice of shifting fairly quickly. So is that, when I use the word practice, I'm assuming that's what it's from. You've been able to practice this shift. Now I'm going to go over here. That's not helpful too. It takes me a heck of a long time. No, I don't.
so what takes you a heck of a long time?
To go easy on myself. I must put myself through the meat grinder pretty much.
Okay, so there's some kind of reward is not the right word, but there's some kind of payoff that you're getting from putting yourself in a bad situation, talking to yourself, reprimanding yourself.
I think I know what it is.
And what is it?
Okay, there's a lot of ways to say it, but let's say it this way. I'm too lazy.
I don't believe that.
All right, okay, I'll change it. I'm generally undisciplined in my I'm a creative person, all over the place, and that's good sometimes. That's nice if you want to write some poetry or something. But this where I have to start holding myself accountable, really really difficult.
Well, how about trying to reframe the accountability towards creativity?
Yeah.
So as I see it, so you and I are a lot alike, I think, in so many ways. I'll try this on for size. So I'm also very creative, and my mind is here and there and everywhere, and it's changes on a dime. And So, but that's my flow. So
Yeah.
that's what I was meant to do
Yep.
when I was made. I was meant to be that way. You're meant to be that way
Yeah.
too.
Yep.
We probably have slightly different ways of being because we're unique individuals, but um, how about using the creativity model to develop a detour or a transition point from the unproductive to the productive?
Mm. I like the word transition.
So, or the other thing I really love to do is to develop one-liners, very simple one-liners that I can tell myself
Yep.
to get back on track.
Yeah. So we'll bring up that fellow again that gave us the show me the way. You know, I shared this with that person online yesterday. The it is what it is thing that used to drive me right up the wall. But it really what that's saying is it is what it is. You must accept it as it is because it is what it is.
And it's not going to change.
And it's not going to change. And it's
Yeah.
not your business to change it in the first
Yeah.
place. Thank you very much.
So can you think of an example of it?
Everything. Um, I mean, often, sadly, but truthfully, it has to do with how people do things, how people things that people say that's coming from them. That's their experience. I will be looking at that and starting to form a what's the word I want? An opinion. I get lots of opinions, by the way.
Okay,
in case you never noticed.
so can you give an example? Just, I mean, I love examples because
Sure.
they're
Well,
so
I can
concrete.
use the dog. You know the dog one. So I just quickly live in a place that has a dog. I mean, well, all of Maine has a dog leash law, but this particular place is for handicapped and elderly people. And so it really makes sense that there'd be a leash rule in place. But there's one woman and another woman's close behind that let their dog off the leash and they run all over the place and into the parking lot and back in the back. And I could have, so I I decided I would say something, to the woman. And she was very taken aback by it. Maybe I had, not maybe, I'm sure I had some kind of flat tone, like, hey, there's a rule here, because there's people that aren't very stable on their feet, and we wouldn't want the dogs to knock. And she just kind of looked at me like, not friendly. And as I walked away, she said to the other woman, "There's always one." And I pulled out my individual badge. Thanks very much. No, I thought I've angered this person. I could have turned around right then and maybe straightened it out. I didn't. And the next day, she was out there and she was like going, and she had her dog off the leash and she could see me in my kitchen window and she was waving at me. And I'm like, oh boy, no, this is not the energy I want to be living in. I'm going to have to take responsibility and make an amend to this woman because it really obviously offended her and has made her angry. So I did. I went up and said I was sorry that my remarks upset her. I can see that they have. And she says, well, these dogs, these two dogs are very thing. I said, I'm not going to argue any point. I just here to make an amend to you because I know that it hurt your feelings and I don't want to be doing that to people. So if you'll accept my amend, I will be extremely happy. And if you don't, that's okay too. So I accept it. So the end part of this story is she now gives me a wave. Today she actually said my name. Hey, Pat, yada, yada, yada. So, you know, do you know how many of those I got to do, Chris? Like maybe 50,000 of those. I don't know if I have to make 50,000, but the point is that the question in the beginning was transition, right?
Mm.
You know, that's the transition.
Yes.
Will we have it? Will we ever have it all perfectly aligned? Probably not. Should we stop trying? We definitely should not stop trying. Because once we stop trying to straighten out, clean off our side of the street, as they say in AA, why? Who are we? You know. So that sort of humility is not. It is not. It's not my strong suit.
Well, I don't really know anyone for whom it is.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
certainly,
but
certainly Jesus.
you reframed the experience both in your heart and to her. And reframing is a very powerful thing in self-growth.
Mm.
And that's really what I'm doing when I realize I'm stuck in a place of thought that's going nowhere, and that I don't want to spend what little time I have left on this earth in that space.
Yes.
Now, having said that, I mean, that's been a huge piece of self-growth, I guess, or living into what I think God wants for me. But one question that I am playing around with in my heart and my mind is to just take forgiveness, the word forgiveness and the concept of forgiveness, take it off the table and put it in storage for a little while, lock it in the garage, where nobody can see it. I can't smell it. I can't think about it. Just the concept of forgiveness, because I think because of its branding problem, I think using the word forgiveness for me takes up more psychic energy than I get from it. So I'm going to try for the next 16 months or 6 months or so is to, whenever the idea of forgiveness comes up, I'm going to reframe it to, well, I'm going to reframe the word to whatever's in front of me that's kind of holding me down, and try to maybe build another house around it, or build another structure around it, or something like that.
Right. I'm hearing you. As you were speaking, the word acceptance came up, because that was one of the 3 words we were going to kind of toss around today: forgiveness, acceptance, and what was the other one? Yeah, no. In any case, acceptance, does acceptance open it up? I mean, is acceptance easier to have on board than forgiveness?
I guess what I'm thinking is that what I need to do in a moment where I'm obsessing about something that has to do with resentments is just transition to something completely different, like
gentleness was the other word.
yeah, I mean,
Yes.
Gentleness is a great place to go from resentment, right?
Yes.
What a great place to go from resentment.
Yes.
And also to acknowledge the acknowledge the presence of God in everything, in everything I do, everything I say, in my every cell of my body, in every molecule of air and
Mhm.
water, that I'm going to go to my grave not figuring most of the stuff out. And that's
Right.
okay.
Yes.
That's okay. I wasn't
Yes.
put here to figure stuff out. I was put here to live to my authenticity, to live into what it was that, the Chris that has never been born before and will never be born again. I want to
Yes.
give, I want to give, freedom, and I want to unleash that Chris before I die and it's gone.
I agree. I agree. And I think that is the work.
Yeah.
Richard Rohr, of course, that's one of his things that he says we have a false self and a true self. And he says, and not many people do not get to their true self in this carnation. And when I read that, I thought, yeah, man, because what I picture in that essence of true self is my child, is
Yeah.
this child that never had bad stuff on her mind, that was just in awe of nature, and looking at seeing a new person and saying, oh, I wonder who that is. I want to meet that person, and have like an open heart, open palms, hey, want to play, what do I mean, yeah, I long for that.
Let's go climb a tree.
Let's go climb a tree. Absolutely. The view is grand. Yeah, that actually brings emotion. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. I think it should bring emotion. I was feeling very, inspired while you were describing that. And, what we have to be aware of, I think, is that the culture we live in, probably the environment we were raised in, does not nurture that kind of self-awareness and self-appreciation. And it's up to
self-love,
us. What's that?
self-love,
Self-love. And
big
it's
time.
up to us um to become aware of who we are in God, and and what 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 divine DNA do we carry? I mean, all of our DNA is divine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and what are we doing? What are we doing when there's no effort? It's a complete flow. We don't have to try it all. It just comes out. And maybe for me, I have to be aware of the things I'm restraining. So if something starts to come out of me and I try to restrain it, that's a hint that what's coming out of me is what God planted in me. Because in our culture, it's not always acceptable or welcome to talk about, meet a person on the street, talk to them for a few minutes and tell them how beautiful they are. I mean, I suppose I could start doing that, but sometimes I feel inhibited. Sometimes I think that's just too much. Um, anyway.
I want to put right in there, segue. I don't do it all the time, but I have been doing something like that, but I do it in a cool way, man. Like yesterday went into the Belfast drug company, which is a new drugstore. It's not new, but it's only a couple of years old, and it's sort of like a private enterprise, I guess. Anyway, I hadn't gone in there because I go to Hannaford's for prescriptions if I need them, but I needed to pick up something from there for a friend. And so I go in, and first of all, the vibe immediately walking in the door is like open. It's like the energy's not coming down on you, at least the way I feel it when I go into Hannaford's, where it's like cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. That's all I can hear. And it's so busy and so forth. Anyway, so I go in the drug thing and I ask for the prescription for my friend. And the girl that waited on me is like, she's at this open looking face, and she's like saying, so, you know, it wasn't small talk. It was important what she said, but it was very very connecting, wanting to connect with me. I'm just a person coming into, and it almost like, I was like, wow, what is this? You know? So she went on, and I back and forth, little short conversation. And I said, this place has a good vibe. And I meant it. And she said, yep, we hear that. And so, I mean, it's like that. But again, I'm not there all the time, you know? I'm not there all the time. I will say mostly to every cashier, though, I'll say, I see their name on, I go, nice job, Bill. And they like that. It means something to them.
Well, I think people behind the cash register are precious people, because they do hard work. There's very little reward, and they're very invisible most of the time.
Absolutely.
So I like to just say something very lighthearted and positive whenever I go through the line.
Let's turn this right around.
Yeah.
And towards ourselves. I certainly need to do this, and you can decide for yourself. You know, maybe when I'm hanging around the house here and I, get feeling blue and yada, 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 I go into the bathroom mirror and I say, hey, look at you. Hi. Or whatever. I mean, it sounds a little crazy, maybe I wouldn't want to tell a lot of people I'm doing that. But why can't we do that for ourselves? Why can't we give ourselves some kudos, even if they're just the sort of like, wow, you got through that. Yeah, wow. Whew, that was a toughie.
You're saying this, and I'm flashing back to my father. My father used to drive through the neighborhood and stick his head out the hi girls, looks like you're having fun. It's total strangers. And
we need reminders. He was reminding them, you're having fun.
Yeah. And he had this twinkle in his eye, that you couldn't not see.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful human. And he spread it around like butter,
Yeah. He knew there was more where that came from.
Right.
There's no, I'm near the bottom of my limit of being nice. I mean, nice is a petri dish, it just keeps growing. We keep
nice as a petri dish. That's a great one-liner, I'll tell you. You should hang on to that one. Nice as a petri dish. I love it.
Anyway, just so much enjoy, these exchanges with you, and they have such deep meaning to me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's such a gift, such a beautiful gift.
Truly, truly. And this is where two or more are gathered.
That's
and this
right.
Is where
there's
no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt in my mind. I feel like I could almost sprout wings right now.
Yeah, float away.
That's probably an exaggeration, but I definitely feel lighter than when we started.
Yeah, me too.
So what do you think? We'll get together soon?
Yeah, good way to end our little Holy Compost discussion. And
yeah, so the major categories today were forgiveness, acceptance, gentleness, transition. I like that word too. That's a word we're going to look at a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, fairness. I wrote down. And the little sentence I wrote is who we are in God.
What a beautiful mystery that is. And I always resist pinning it down.
Mm. Maybe you're supposed to resist pinning it down.
That's right. That's right. Because it's too beautiful for words.
Totally. I'm going to even say, maybe we shouldn't try to pin anything down.
That's right.
Including
down,
ourselves.
Yeah.
Including ourselves.
Right.
God. Whew.
Okay, my friend.
Okay. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.